AI job losses are going to be the straw that breaks the middle class's back. And not just the middle class. In this video, we're going to review Peter Diamandis' recent article where he says just the opposite. And I'm going to share my thoughts about that. If you want, I've put the full article down below. There's a link down below that you can click on it, read it, and get up to speed on it if you want after this. So the article is actually called Why AI Job Loss is Actually Job Liberation. And I'm here to tell you it's just the opposite. In fact, it may take down most white-collar, upper-middle-class jobs, and it may wreck the economy, and we may not be able to recover from it. So I actually just totally respect and appreciate Peter Diamandis. I've been following him for years. I think the guy is brilliant and prescient, and he gathers around him on his blogs and on his podcast incredible people with brilliant ideas and amazing insights. I just disagree with him on this point, and I think there's a lot of reasons to talk about it. And I wanted to get the conversation going, and I wanted you to start thinking about it because it's going to have huge long-term impacts for the economy and for probably even your well-being economically. He starts out by saying, yes, AI eliminates entry-level jobs and down 16% already. I agree with him on that. And so does Reid Hoffman, because a lot of this information comes from a conversation Peter had with Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, and they have super deep data on jobs and everything else. And so they can see it in real time, the areas where the jobs are starting to disappear because of AI, especially at the entry level, because AI is still not just entry level, but it has already started from the bottom of entry level and it's moving up the food chain of jobs. So we can see that already. The second point he makes in his article is this: the real transformation is humans evolving beyond entry level constraints. We don't need to upskill. We need to evolve doing what actually matters. And then he goes on to say, the career of the future is entrepreneurship. It's how you use these tools to create value in the world. Well, I agree with some of it, but some of it's just completely bogus. I mean, if you're thinking of going up the corporate ladder or up a business ladder or up a skill ladder in certain areas, entry level is absolutely essential. You can't hop over the basic fundamentals of any industry. You can't start out as, say, a purple belt. You got to start out as a white belt and then a blue belt. And you've got to go through, you got to learn the ropes. All these things are true. Plus, you build relationships in doing that. And I fundamentally disagree that everybody cannot be an entrepreneur. I used to teach entrepreneurship and worked with a company that helped entrepreneurs. And I can tell you that 90% of people are not cut out to be entrepreneurs from the standpoint of emotional tone or experience or discipline or drive. It's just not the way people work. It's like saying everybody can become an NBA star. It's not going to happen. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what people can do, even with AI. Because what you're doing then, if you require them to have AI and use AI, you're requiring them to augment who they are not in a way that won't work. So I'm here with my friend Morris. He's also my video producer, and we have a lot of really deep conversations. And so he's going to ask a bunch of questions of me about this because this is something we talk about a lot.
Yes, Jonathan. So here's my first question. Looking back at the Industrial Revolution, the information revolution, right? People today, they can go straight from school into working in an office. But if we go back 200 years, most people wouldn't be able to read and write. Is it possible that in the future, people can also skip entry-level jobs and go straight to higher-level jobs and working with AI?
It's a great question. And I think it's part of Peter's assumption. And I disagree with it. Here's why. I think you require a certain fundamental level of intelligence and education and understanding of domains before you can really just jump into AI and start using it. So, for example, I could probably get an AI radiology bot to do something, but someone with 5 years of radiology experience and a medical degree can do a hell of a lot better and immediately and right off the bat. And if it's up to me, I'm going to end up killing patients with a radiology AI bot because I'll ask the wrong prompts or questions, whatever. But a radiology expert can just jump in and go, I have enough experience to help direct the AI correctly and to work with it and train it. If you're looking to me to train the AI, it ain't going to happen, not for radiology. So I think there's a big difference. There's a gap there. And that goes to a second fundamental piece, which is this, I think, Morris. If you look at everyone becoming an entrepreneur, There's a huge subset of disciplines that are required in any domain that you start at an entry level, work your way up, you get expertise and so forth. And then over time, you can move into something and go for it. Now, can a young person start making an app and get creative and do those things? Absolutely. There's 1,000 entry level things you can do. But for the areas where AI is going to replace jobs, fundamentally, it just won't matter.
One thing I've also heard is that before the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people worked as entrepreneurs. That's why people had their bakery at the bottom and the bottom floor, and then their living space in the first floor, and their last names was their job: Baker, Smith, and so on. And
Yes.
what I read is that we're going to go back to that kind of fragmented economy. If that happens, wouldn't then AI empower this new fragmented future economy?
I think AI will certainly support it. For example, for the baker, the AI may be able to, maybe an AI agent or bot that can know how much yeast they're using, what's their monthly flow of flour, where can they go buy it in bulk, or with a shared bakery down the street and do a collaborative buy and things like that. There'll be all sorts of efficiency increases and automation that happens. I don't know how many people that will replace, but what we're really talking about isn't the opening up a cupcake store or starting a shoe repair store. Those aren't things that we're looking at with AI. We're really talking about so many middle-class jobs being replaced. So for example, there's a company, I believe it's called Aurora in Texas, that is now using self-driving trucks between the ports and everything in Houston and Dallas, Texas, which is a huge distribution hub. So they're already starting to do that with trucks. There's also using automated trucks in shipping ports. So they're moving things around in the port with automated trucks, right? And that's happening more and more. Amazon's got over 1 million robots in their warehouses and factories. That's incredible. These are the jobs you're going to see that are going to be replaced. It's not the baker. It's not the person starting up a lawnmower business or something like that. You're going to see in these white collar and sub white collar jobs and super white collar jobs that are going to be replaced because the AI can work all day, much more efficient, nonstop, and is now at the level of the average person's intelligence, perhaps, and within every 18 months to 2 years is doubling the intelligence. So it'll go from 100 to 125 to 150 up to 200 or whatever. And then the AI will just replace people. As we talked about before, for example, think of a company that handles support, telephone support, right? And if they have 100 employees and the next company that's just like that in the city next, say Minneapolis, St. Paul, one has 100 employees here, one has 100 employees here working in the call center. If this one replaces 95% of their call center employees with an AI bot that is 99% as good over 6 months, the other one's going to go out of business because they can't compete financially. So it's a zero-sum game. It's a race to reduce cost. Now, the racing to reduce cost is a good thing at first, but then what do those 95 people do for a job? Just stop for a second and go, where do they go buy their groceries? With what money? How do they go get another call center job because call center jobs are going away? So who's going to retrain them? Is the state going to retrain them? Is the state going to pay for all the unemployment? Budget's going to get massively hit if all these things start happening at once, which if they're talking about millions and millions of tens of millions of jobs being erased in the next 5 to 7 years, the state's going to get hammered with unemployment claims it won't be able to pay because you're going to have a dramatic drop in revenue, but you're going to have a massive increase in claims. So it's going to get hammered. So that brings us exactly into point number 3. Every tech revolution creates exponentially more jobs than it destroys. And Reed, who is one of his partners, Insight captures this perfectly. I think that if you look at the Industrial Revolution, the net effect is always more job creation in the long run. Yes, in the Industrial Revolution, but not in the AI revolution. So it's very interesting because humans have this habit of trying to predict things based upon the past. It's going to look the same as the past. It's going to look the same as the past. It's going to look the same as the past. And it doesn't. History rhymes, but it doesn't always rhyme. In other words, so you can see that when we moved from agriculture, that we were industrializing agriculture, we created more food. When we had factories, we created more products. But eventually what happens is, say, for example, there was a factory that had 5,000 employees in it 25, 30 years ago. Then it moved to China and it had 500 employees because they started automating, or Japan or Korea. And now if it comes back here, it'll have 50 employees. So you're down 4,950 employees from when it started in America, and then we reshored the factory back 25, 30, 40 years later. So there's a massive reduction in the number of employees. Yes, it's more productive. Yes, it makes more money for the investors. Yes, it adds to the economy, but not jobs. And that's the thing. The United States has lost like 10 million jobs since Ronald Reagan in manufacturing. If you brought all those jobs back by those same factories and what they were producing, it would probably be like 2 million jobs. So you'd net lose 8 million jobs. And that's what we're going to have now. You just can't infinitely create more economy. I know the economy continues to grow, but it's not going to be an infinite growth when AI is going exponential. So the exponential growth of AI and its use in zero-sum game, meaning winners and losers only, it's going to cause massive destruction in the economy, millions and millions of jobs. So, for example, New York City, 20 million people metro, 5 million people working in New York City itself. They say that 40% is going to be white collar jobs in New York City. So that's basically 2 million people out of 5 million people in New York City are white collar jobs. If AI in the next 5 to 7 years replaces 25% of white collar jobs, you're going to see 500,000 people become unemployed in New York City. Now, if those jobs are paying, say, $80,000 to $100,000 a year, and you lose 500,000, you're talking billions and billions of dollars washed out of New York City. But more importantly, where are those 500,000 people going to, and their families going to go get money? Where are they going to pay for their rent or their house or the education or the groceries for suddenly 500,000 people across just half a decade? That's going to wipe out the economy of New York City and the tax base. So you're going to have a massive increase in people pinging the tax base for support and unemployment and everything else. And you're going to have a massive decrease in revenues because the taxes will go away. Also, as you move to AI, AI doesn't pay taxes in a space. So if you replace 100 workers or 1,000 workers in Des Moines and the AI is in the cloud, who's paying the taxes? They'll just move the company or a shoebox office into a state that pays the least taxes. And now Iowa just lost thousands of jobs worth of taxes and income. And all the places, the coffee shop, McDonald's, the shoe store, the sporting goods store, all these places suddenly don't have those 1,000 employees buying products there. So the local economy just begins to shake down.
That would be interesting if agents would each have to pay income tax in the future, each AI agent.
Well, that's why you just move the job. You move the company. You move the company to a state with no state tax, because some states have no income tax. They have property tax and sales tax. So those states will get all the AI companies coming to them.
You don't think that AI is going to create new jobs that we can't even envision yet, and it's going to create plenty of jobs to provide new opportunities?
It absolutely will. I mean, build out of data centers, power systems, microgrids, all that will happen. So there'll be a slight uptick in those kinds of jobs, which, by the way, are highly skilled and they're not white collar. But there's also going to be a lot of new programming jobs and data jobs and things like that. That's very true. So you'll take the 95 people, take that 100 people employee company in Des Moines, Iowa. You'll get rid of 95 of the employees. You'll add 5 more who are going to be running the AI and the tech and all that. So you've got 10 employees where you had 100. You still lost in that 90 jobs. And you say, well, but where are those people going to come from? Where are those 5 going to come from? Well, they're going to come from programming jobs that they would have had at Microsoft, at Google, at other companies, because they're shedding jobs like crazy. I think I sent you a list of the top 25 or 30 tech companies that have already cut hundreds of thousands of jobs because they're using AI. So those people will probably have some jobs. They can shift over and become part of the 5-person team that's supporting Iowa. They may not even live in Iowa. In fact, it's very likely that a lot of companies that use AI will shift to states with no income tax and no state tax on the businesses, and instead that rely on property tax and sales tax to run their state. So, they'll move out of states where they're paying money for the employees and the taxes from the employees are generating income and revenue for the state. And those companies will move out of there and become a shoebox company someplace else with a lower impact on the taxes. So radical increase in profits for the company, radical decrease in jobs and income for humans, and for tax revenue for the state that supports the humans with the schools, the roads, and everything else. So the fifth and final portion of Peter Diamandis' article kind of ties all this together. And he calls it timeline thinking separates winners from victims. The challenge is the compressed timelines we're experiencing. Job displacement is happening much faster than people expected. Now, this is the guy that says it's going to blow up amazing number of jobs. He says this is happening faster than expected. So smart thinkers operate in decades, not in daily panic cycles. While others fear quarterly disruption, entrepreneurs are building the infrastructure that will employ millions in roles that don't even exist today. Yes, he's right in some sense. It will employ millions in roles that don't exist today. And in doing so, it'll displace tens and hundreds of millions that have jobs today. And that's the problem. I think I feel it feels very dismissive for him to say, well, others fear quarterly disruption. People are afraid of not being able to pay their bills. The average American has less than $1,000 in reserve. If a medical bill comes up that's too big and like someone gets cancer or heart attack, because we don't have socialized medicine like 19 of the other 20 countries in the top G20, the fact of the matter is Americans go bankrupt. The number one reason for a GoFundMe is for someone to pay their medical bills because they're going bankrupt. And the number one reason people go bankrupt is for medical bills in America. So it's a little disingenuous, I think, for him to say that they're panicking on daily cycles. Yeah, they can't pay the bills. And when they see their jobs going away, they panic. I would too. So the other piece is that this is going to cause, it's happening much faster than expected. In other words, much faster than anyone has planned for, much faster than we have decided to create rules and regulations that make sense for the public, much faster than we've put the brakes on for what happens if one of these AI just jailbreak into the cloud or something, right? Much faster than people are ready and prepared to accept the change. If you push a wind a very fast, say like a 30, 40 mile an hour wind, a tree can bend. If you give it 120 mile an hour wind that's much faster, the tree will break. And what's going to happen is AI has the big potential for breaking the economy, not just the personal home and family economy of tens of millions of Americans, because there's 70 million white collar jobs. And if 25% go away, that's like 17.5 million jobs gone, right? That's just the white collar jobs, let alone the truckers or other automations that are going to happen. Again, yes, he's right. It's going to create millions of jobs. But worse, it's going to devastate tens of millions of jobs. And that means families. And that means, yeah, they're going to panic because they don't have a retirement. And our country is such that we don't have health care for people. Well, we do have Obamacare or whatever your state calls it. But as you can see, that's being defunded by the current folks in office and they want to get rid of it. So we're heading into a very uncertain time, Morris. It's very difficult for people. And he ends up here with bottom line is what we're seeing is the last generation's of humans constrained by entry-level work. I disagree. What we're seeing is the disappearance of necessary, inherently valuable entry-level work so people can grow and develop and mature, get experiences. I'm trying to understand if this is right for them and not be dependent on having to leapfrog years of experience to suddenly join with an AI to do your job. That just doesn't make sense and it's not going to work that way.
So what you're saying is that the AI revolution is so fast, much faster than any of the past revolutions that we've had. And it happens so fast and at such a great scale that we can't compare it to previous revolutions.
That's right. It's bigger, faster, and more transformative than any prior technical or business or job revolution that we've ever seen. And it's coming at a time with a lot of other complications, and we're just not ready for it. And the public isn't ready for it. And the level of debt in the tens of trillions of dollars that Americans and the government have is not ready for it. We don't have the cushion to soften the blow anymore. And we have a large part of the country that doesn't believe we should. They just want to let people go bankrupt and go jobless. I just fundamentally disagree with it. Look, when the cars came on the scene and replaced horses, which they did, cars came on the scene, replaced horses. It happened very quickly for their timeline over the course of like 20 years. And that was a fundamental change. But the people who were working in blacksmith shops were able to go work at auto mechanic shops. You're not going to get someone who's driving a truck across country, bringing vegetables from California to Chicago. You're not going to get them to retrain to be an AI engineer. You're just not. And who's going to pay for the training, right? One of the things that we talked about, I think 10, 12 years ago, during an election was that we have to get off coal because of climate. And we want to, and the party, which was the Democrats, saying we have to get off coal because of climate, was saying we want to retrain the coal miners to do different jobs. We're going to bring in federal money. We're going to help them transition. We're going to make it special tax zones so you incentivize businesses to come there. That was a really cool idea for like West Virginia and other parts of the country, maybe Eastern Kentucky and so forth. But to do it for the whole country all at once across dozens of job categories from, working middle class all the way up to upper middle class white collar jobs, it's going to be too much, too fast, too soon, and too many people for the system to handle.
It sounds like if in a perfect world the re-education was possible, then there could be a transition. Is that right?
Yeah, You can re-educate people. There's no doubt about it. But remember that 60% of America has a functional education of 8th grade or less, which means you've got a lot of re-educating to do. You've got a lot of educating to do. You got to bridge that divide to get them to the place where they can make use of these different tools. Even if it's just saying, I'm going to go from a truck driver to building, data centers, there's still a lag time in there. Who's going to pay for all this transition? And then when they finish building the data centers, then what do they do for a job? So it's not well thought out. Not that it should be, because I don't expect Peter Diamandis, brilliant guy, doing a great job of thinking and at least kicking the ideas around for all of us so we can figure this out. But who's going to pay for it? We don't have an answer for that.
Maybe in re-education, maybe our one hope is that AI can do the re-education, like AI teaching people into new career paths.
Right.
But every learning still takes a personal effort to really learn it. So it's still difficult.
And you've got to deal with the psychology of it. You're talking, taking, say, 25, 30 million Americans, ripping them out of an old job, ripping them out of a career they had. Maybe they're 40 or 50 or even 55 and about to retire. And now you want them to make this massive transition into an entirely different worldview and an entirely different job. It's going to cost a huge amount of money, take a huge amount of time. And it's going to be very difficult. And I think the thing we really have to ask ourselves is, are we going to do this together, or are we just going to leave a whole bunch of people behind? And I don't believe we should be leaving people behind. I think we should make this transition together. I think it should be well thought off. And we're not going to get, they talk about the people who are talking about this transition, who are the techno entrepreneurs, are talking about, well, we're probably going to have universal basic income. And that's kind of a farce, because let's say you got a woman, she works in New York City, single mom, she's making $80,000 as a white collar job, and she gets that job ripped away. Now her bills, she's probably not saving money in New York City at 80 or even $100,000 a year as a single mom or a single dad. You're just not doing that. And then you suddenly get this universal basic income of $24,000 a year. That's enough to maybe buy food, but you're not doing all the things you need to do to live that lifestyle, which is fundamentally just survival in New York at $80,000 a year, unless you're living with multiple people in an apartment. You're basically going to rip all these people out of their careers and shove them down to a universal basic income. That's not going to work. You're going to crash the economy. And by the way, if you're talking 10, 20 million Americans, who's going to come up with universal basic income for 10, 20 million Americans? We have $35 trillion in federal debt. And the current administration is gutting the IRS, reducing tax revenues, reducing taxes on the rich and corporations. And where's the money going to come from?
For the people who have these jobs and are most affected by AI, what do you recommend, considering this future and there's no help coming? What would you recommend that we do today to prepare for that?
That's a big question. That's like saying, hey, look, you've got 30 minutes warning on the tsunami. you can get your go bag and a couple of things to take out of the house, but your house is going to get leveled. So what would I recommend they do? I think the most important thing we can all do is step back from the crazy rage machine of social media, in a sense, the need to be right, the desire to get certainty, and understand that things are just going to be uncertain. We're off the roadmap. We're out in the wilderness of economic radical change, of jobs, of the economy, of taxes and debt and politics. The world's just going to keep changing. So ground yourself in yourself, in your family, in your friends, in your spirituality or religion, in your neighborhood, in your community. Ground yourself in things that have actual deep meaning and purposefulness for you. Ground yourself in the people you love. Spend more time with the people you care about. Invest more in your neighbors and your children and your children's and your neighbors' children and your community and your church, mosque, or synagogue, or whatever it is for you. Ground yourself in things that have enduring meaning and purpose. Help young people, help old people, make the world a better place, because we can't control those other things, but we can take care of ourselves. We can get as fit and healthy, eat better as we can. We can get more sleep, which is probably the number one thing we need. And we can just be better people to each other and to ourselves. That's the best thing we can do, because the change is going to come. So we have to decide how we want to experience the change. And just like a mangrove forest is, mangroves that sit in the ocean at the edge between the ocean and the land that buffer the tsunamis that's coming in, your relationships, your spiritual and emotional well-being, saving money, reducing your debts, focusing on what's really important to you in your life, things that mean something to you. That's where the buffer is. That's where the strength lies. Our strength lies in our community, in our relationships, in our nation, in our worldview of this is who we have to take care of is each other. And we're going to go through this. The question is, do we go through it together, supporting each other, or fighting each other? And I'm all for supporting each other. So one of the things you can do, and I've made it especially for you, is I've created an ebook that you can go download down below. We're going to have to change our thinking. We're going to have to change our worldview a little bit. We're going to get a little more expansive and a little more secure with ourselves and more loving and kind to the rest of the world and ourselves. So there's an ebook down there just for you called Change Your Mind, Change Your Life. Highly recommend you download it, give it a read. Again, on all these issues that we've talked about today, grab the Peter Diamandis article as well. Read it. Add your comments down below. Download the ebook. Read that. Let me know what you think about it. Subscribe, like, share this with a friend, and let's have this discussion, because if we can't talk about it, we can't manage it.